When and how you pay your credit card bill matters more than you think, because if you pay your bill wrong, your credit score can drop instantly, a mistake that can take years to recover from. So today, I'm going to show you the one payment trick that can drastically raise your score, how to drop your interest rate from 20% down to 0, and the long-standing myth that could be costing you thousands of dollars a year. So let's start by talking about why credit cards are different from your typical monthly bills. When you get a utility bill or need to pay your rent, it's pretty clear that you need to pay the full amount by whenever the bill is due. But credit cards are interesting because they're a little bit more flexible than that. When your credit card statement arrives, you'll see a few key line items: your total balance, the minimum payment you need to make to avoid late fees, the due date you need to pay by to avoid interest, and a few more. But ultimately, you get to decide how much you pay and when you pay it. That's why I say credit cards are more flexible. But here's the catch: when and how you make your payments makes a huge difference when it comes to your credit score. So let's break this down. There are 5 factors that go into your score. 3 of them are relatively minor, but 2 of them are especially heavy hitters, so you really want to understand how they work. The first is your payment history, which accounts for 35% of your credit score. And payment history is pretty simple. Are you paying your bill on time or not? But here's the thing though, just one late payment can really mess with your score, and the longer you let that payment slide, the worse your score will get. And a single missed payment can stick around on your credit report for years, which makes it super hard to get approved for new credit and get decent interest on future loans. But the second big factor, which accounts for 30% of your credit score, is your credit utilization ratio, which is how much of the credit available to you that you're actually using. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit and you use all $10,000, that's a 100% utilization. But that's too high, because banks like to see a utilization of under 30%, because the more credit you use, the riskier you become in their eyes. And the riskier you become, the lower your credit score will be. And here's why this matters. Once a month, your credit card provider adds up everything you've spent over the previous month, takes a snapshot, and sends your current balance to the credit bureaus. This happens about 20 to 25 days before your due date, and it's called your statement closing date. Now, this is important because the balance you have on your statement closing date is what gets used to calculate your credit utilization ratio. And so if you're holding a high balance on your statement closing date, it can look like your credit utilization ratio is really high, which isn't good for you. And in some cases, this will prompt the credit bureaus to drop your score, even if you pay off your balance in full every month. So that's why paying before your statement closing date is so important, because if you pay down your balances before your statement closes, a lower balance gets reported to the credit bureaus, your credit utilization stays low, and you're all good. But if you don't pay off your balance before your statement closing date, then a higher balance will get reported, your credit utilization will be high, and your credit score might drop as a result. So what can you do here to ensure your score doesn't drop? Well, ideally, don't use more than 30% of the credit available to you. So if your limit is $5,000 a month, then don't use more than $1,500. And if it's $10,000 a month, then don't use more than $3,000. But how can you do that if you need to make a large purchase if your credit limit isn't high enough to keep your monthly spending below 30%? Well, there are a few things you can do. The first, which absolutely everyone should be doing, is asking for a credit limit increase. I've talked to so many people who believe that asking for a credit limit increase makes them look desperate or risky to lenders, but the truth is kind of the opposite, because when you have a higher credit limit, your utilization ratio goes down, which lenders love. So increasing your credit limit will generally send your credit score up, not down. But that's only the first thing you can do, because whether you increase your credit limit or not, you should also be lowering your utilization down below 30% by your statement closing date every single month. And to be honest, 30% is the general guideline, but the closer you can be to 0, the better. So we're going to talk about how to get yours down to just 1%, because it's so easy. You just need to pay your balance a few weeks earlier than you normally would. That's it. So to put this another way, here's what I'm saying. You can spend as much as you want throughout the month, as long as you have your credit utilization under control by your statement closing date. And ideally, you're going to pay off 99% of your bill by that statement closing date so that your credit utilization that gets sent to the bureaus hovers around just 1%. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't I just pay off 100% of my balance before the statement closing date? Why bother with 99%? Well, you could do that, but it's actually beneficial to show a small balance on your statement closing date, because it shows the credit bureaus that you're actively using your credit responsibly, which isn't the case if you have a 0 balance. Some people have even said that their credit score has dropped for having a 0 balance on their statement closing date, so it's definitely worth keeping some kind of a balance, which is why we're targeting 1%. But you still want to pay off that remaining 1% balance by your due date to avoid paying interest. So here's what you do. Throughout the month, use your card however you want. Then, 2 to 3 days before your statement closing date, pay off 99% of the balance, and then make a second payment for the last 1% a few days before your due date. That's all there is to it. Now, if this seems like a lot to you, I get it, but it's actually so simple. You just log into your credit cards 2 to 3 days before their statement closing dates, pay off 99% of your balance, and you're all good. And remember, the reason to do this is because it can have a real impact on your credit score, which can save you tens of thousands of dollars when you apply for a mortgage or other major loans in the future. So this is totally worth your time, especially if your credit score isn't where you want it to be. But now I want to bust one of the biggest credit card myths out there, because I've heard so many people say you need to carry a balance month to month in order to build good credit. But that couldn't be more wrong. And following that advice means you're literally throwing money away. Because here's the truth, carrying a balance beyond your due date will never improve your credit score. Never. What will improve your score is making payments on time and keeping your utilization ratio low, which is what I just showed you how to do. But if you carry a balance past your due date, all you're doing is signing up to pay interest, which is flushing money down the drain. But we should also talk about 0% APR cards, because transferring your balance onto a card with a 0% interest rate sounds pretty enticing. For example, imagine you're carrying a $5,000 balance month over month and paying a 20% APR. I don't recommend this by any means, but it might be a situation you find yourself in, and if so, transferring that balance to a card offering 0% APR for 12 or 18 months means that every dollar you pay will go directly toward reducing your debt instead of being partially consumed by interest. And this will accelerate your debt payoff timeline dramatically. But this doesn't come without risks, and there are a few important things to know about 0% APR cards. For one, when that promotional period ends, any remaining balance will start accruing interest at the card's standard rate, which might be even higher than the rate on your original card. Some 0% APR cards also include a deferred interest clause in the fine print, which means if you don't pay the entire balance by the end of the promotional period, they'll retroactively charge interest on the original purchase amount as if the 0% promotion never existed. So you definitely want to have your balance paid in full before the 0% period ends. But if you know you can do that, then these cards can be super valuable. And so now you know exactly how to pay your credit card bill to boost your credit score and save a ton of money. But there's something else that can make an even bigger difference for you, and that's choosing the right credit card in the first place. Because the truth is, not all cards are created equal, and the top 1% of cards offer way more value than all the rest. The problem is, most people don't know which cards are in that 1%, and they leave thousands of dollars on the table every single year. So to get access to the cards that will have you taking overseas vacations for next to nothing and saving 10% or more on a lot of what you buy, watch this video next.